I'm Natalie, 34, and Christmas used to be my favorite holiday until it became an annual reminder that I was invisible in my own family. Despite building something extraordinary, my parents and siblings never saw my worth. This year, after a 5-year absence, I returned home hoping something had changed. The familiar knot in my stomach tightened as I approached the house where I'd always been the afterthought. Little did they know what awaited them. If you've ever felt invisible to the people who should see you most, drop a comment about where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and join me on this journey of unexpected vindication. Growing up in our middle-class Chicago neighborhood, I learned early that my place in the family hierarchy was at the bottom. Our modest 2-story house on Maple Street was where I first understood that some children are treasured while others are tolerated. My brother Brian, 2 years older, was the golden child. The star quarterback with average grades who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Eleanor and Richard, my mother and father, attended every single one of his games, cheering from the stands with handmade signs and taking dozens of photos. My father would proudly wear Brian's jersey number and boast about his son to anyone who would listen. Amanda, my older sister by 4 years, was the beauty. Her blonde hair and blue eyes, so similar to my mother's, earned her constant praise and attention. Her mediocre performance in school was overlooked because she was socially gifted, according to my mother. Every boyfriend was welcomed warmly. Every dance was a major family event with professional photographs. Jessica, the baby of the family, younger than me by 3 years, was the artist. Her paintings, while amateur, covered the walls of our home. My parents funded her art classes, bought expensive supplies, and drove her to exhibitions in neighboring states. They spoke of her creative spirit with reverence. And then there was me. I brought home straight, as that were met with distracted nods. "That's nice, Natalie," my father would say, without looking up from the newspaper. When I won the state math competition in 8th grade, my mother merely asked if I could help set the table for dinner. The trophy was placed in the back of a cabinet while Brian's participation trophies lined the mantel. "Natalie's just naturally smart," my mother would tell relatives, dismissing my hours of studying late into the night. "She doesn't need the encouragement the others do." Christmas mornings were particularly painful memories. I would wake up excited like any child, only to find my stocking noticeably lighter than my siblings. The presents under the tree for me were practical. Socks, school supplies, a plain sweater. Meanwhile, Brian unwrapped the latest gaming console. Amanda received expensive jewelry. Jessica got art supplies that cost more than all my gifts combined. "You're just more practical, sweetie," my mother explained when I was 10 and couldn't hide my disappointment. "The others need more external motivation." High school brought more of the same. I graduated as valedictorian, but my parents nearly missed the ceremony because Jessica had an art show the same day. They arrived just as I was leaving the stage, having delivered my speech to an audience that didn't include my family. When I got accepted to MIT with a full scholarship, my father's response was, "At least we don't have to pay for it." The acceptance letters from Harvard, Stanford, and Yale that also offered full rides were barely acknowledged. The same week, Brian got accepted to the state university with partial athletic scholarship, and my parents threw him a party. The pattern continued through college. My visits home were marked by conversations that centered around my siblings' lives. My accomplishments were footnotes, if mentioned at all. When I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in computer science and business, my parents attended but left early to attend Jessica's minor art exhibition. The last Christmas I attended before this one was 5 years ago. I had just started my company and was working incredible hours to get it off the ground. I flew home, exhausted but hoping for some family connection during the holidays. That Christmas, Brian announced he'd been promoted to assistant manager at the local sporting goods store. My parents bought him a new car as a combination Christmas and promotion gift. Amanda showed off her engagement ring from her boyfriend of 6 months, and my parents immediately offered to pay for the entire wedding. Jessica revealed she'd been accepted to a summer art program in Italy, which my parents agreed to finance completely. When it came time for my update, I began to tell them about my startup and the promising meetings I'd had with potential investors. My mother interrupted me halfway through. That's nice, dear. Can you help me in the kitchen? The potatoes need mashing. Later that night, as we exchanged gifts, I received a generic bath set that still had the clearance sticker partially attached. My father couldn't remember what he'd gotten me when I thanked him. Your sister helped pick those out, he said vaguely. She knows what you like. I left the next morning instead of staying the planned 3 days. No one called to check why I'd left early. That was the moment I decided to stop seeking their validation and channel all my energy into building something meaningful for myself. 5 years without a visit home. 5 years of occasional phone calls that lasted less than 5 minutes. 5 years of declining holiday invitations with the excuse of being too busy. 5 years of building my life and my empire, piece by determined piece. Boston welcomed me with its cold winter winds and complete anonymity. I rented a tiny studio apartment in Somerville that barely fit a bed and desk. The bathroom was so small I had to step out to turn around. But it was mine, and it was far from the shadow of my family's indifference. With my savings of $20,000 and a laptop, I began coding my vision into reality. My concept was ambitious, but filled a clear gap in the market. I wanted to create an integrated platform that would revolutionize how small businesses manage their operations, from inventory to customer relationships to financial forecasting. The existing solutions were either too expensive, too complicated, or too limited. My days stretched into nights as I worked tirelessly, fueled by instant noodles and determination. I called my platform integrated because simplicity was its selling point. While other software solutions required businesses to patch together multiple programs, mine would be the all-in-one solution that actually worked seamlessly. The first 6 months were brutal. I approached 37 investors and received 37 rejections. Some were polite, others dismissive, but all were definitive no's. Your idea is too ambitious for one person. The market is saturated. You don't have enough business experience. Each rejection stung, but none compared to the lifetime of dismissal I'd experienced at home. This pain was productive. It fueled me. I pivoted my strategy. Instead of seeking large investments, I approached small local businesses directly. A boutique clothing store became my first client, followed by a family-owned restaurant. I charged minimal fees, sometimes working for free, just to prove my concept. Maria, the owner of the boutique, was impressed enough to recommend me to her network. This girl created something that saved me 20 hours a week in paperwork, she told other business owners. Word spread through the tight-knit community of Boston's small businesses. By the end of my first year, I had 30 clients and enough income to rent a small office space and hire my first employee, a brilliant programmer named Oliver, who believed in my vision. I've worked for 3 startups before, he told me during his interview. None of them had a product as elegant as yours. With Oliver handling some of the programming, I could focus on refining the user experience and expanding our features. We released a major update that included advanced analytics, and our client base doubled within 3 months. The turning point came when a tech blogger discovered our platform and wrote a glowing review. Integrated is what every small business owner has been waiting for, the headline proclaimed. The article caught the attention of several venture capital firms. 2 years after my last Christmas at home, I secured my first significant funding round of $5 million. The investment allowed me to hire a proper team, move to a real office in downtown Boston, and accelerate our growth plans. My team expanded to 15 people, then 30, then 50. We moved to a larger office overlooking the Charles River. Our client base grew from hundreds to thousands. Revenue increased exponentially as we introduced tiered pricing plans and enterprise solutions. Through it all, I kept my success private from my family. Our occasional phone calls remained superficial. When they asked about my work, I gave vague answers about working in tech and doing okay. They never pressed for details, and I never volunteered them. 3 years into my journey, I made a strategic acquisition of a smaller competitor that had excellent mobile technology but was struggling financially. The move was covered by several technology publications, but I used my maiden name professionally, which provided some anonymity from casual Google searches. The following year, We expanded internationally, opening offices in London and Singapore. Our user base climbed to over 100,000 businesses worldwide. Forbes included me in their 30 Under 30 list, calling Integrated the future of business management software. By the fifth year, my company's valuation reached $3 billion. I led a successful round of private investment that raised an additional $400 million for global expansion. We acquired 3 more companies to enhance our product offerings. My personal net worth, mostly in company equity, exceeded $700 million. I bought a penthouse in Boston and a vacation home on Cape Cod, but lived relatively modestly compared to my wealth. I drove a Tesla because it was practical, not flashy. I donated substantial amounts to education initiatives focused on supporting overlooked students, establishing a foundation that worked quietly but effectively. Throughout this journey, I built a surrogate family of friends and colleagues who valued me for who I was. My best friend Olivia, whom I met at a Women in Tech conference, became the sister I wished I'd had. My executive team respected my vision and intelligence. For the first time in my life, I was seen. Then, the Christmas invitation arrived in my email. "The whole family will be together this year," my mother wrote. "Even Brian is coming in from Denver with his new girlfriend. We'd love to have you join us if you're not too busy." The familiar dismissive tone was there between the lines. The implication that I would probably be too busy, or that my presence was an afterthought. For a moment, I considered ignoring it as I had for the past 5 years. But something had changed. I was no longer the daughter desperate for approval. I was Natalie Carter, CEO of a billion-dollar company, a woman who had built something extraordinary through her own vision and persistence. Perhaps it was time to go home, not seeking validation, but offering the gift of truth. The invitation sat in my inbox for 3 days before I finally replied. My finger hovered over the keyboard as conflicting emotions battled within me. Part of me wanted to maintain the distance I'd carefully cultivated over 5 years. Another part wanted to return triumphantly, to finally be seen by the people who had looked through me for so long. I called Olivia that evening as I sipped a glass of Cabernet in my penthouse, overlooking the Boston skyline. "They invited me home for Christmas," I said without preamble when she answered. "The family that doesn't deserve you?" Olivia replied. We'd spent enough wine nights discussing my childhood for her to understand the complexity of my relationship with them. "Yes, those ones," I said with a small laugh that didn't quite reach my eyes.
I'm considering accepting.
"Are you sure that's a good idea? The last time you saw them, you came back and worked for 2 weeks straight without sleeping. I had to practically break down your door to make sure you were eating." I swirled the wine in my glass, watching the burgundy liquid catch the light. "I'm different now. They can't hurt me the same way." "People like that always find new ways to hurt you, Nat," Olivia cautioned. "They'll move the goalposts. Your billion-dollar company won't be good enough because you're not married, or because you don't have children, or because tech isn't a real industry like whatever your brother does." She wasn't wrong, but something inside me had shifted. I think I need this. Not for them, but for me. I need to close this chapter properly. The next day, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Levine, the therapist I'd been seeing for the past 3 years. Her office, with its comfortable leather chairs and soft lighting, had become a place of clarity for me. "I've been invited home for Christmas," I told her, sitting with perfect posture, a habit from years of trying to be noticed. Dr. Levine observed me carefully. "And how do you feel about that?" "Conflicted," I admitted. "I've built this life completely separate from them. Part of me wants to keep it that way." "And the other part?" I paused, finding the words. "The other part wants to walk in there as the person I've become. Not to seek their approval, but to finally stop hiding my success from them." "What would that accomplish for you?" The question made me reflect. Closure, maybe. The chance to interact with them as equals, not as the perpetually overlooked daughter. I've spent so much energy keeping my world separate. I'm tired of the division. Dr. Levine nodded. "Just remember that going home with expectations, even unconscious ones, can set you up for disappointment. They may not react the way you hope, even to your success." "I know," I acknowledged. But I think I'm strong enough now to handle whatever comes. After another session and considerable reflection, I made my decision. I responded to my mother's email with a simple, "I'll be there," looking forward to seeing everyone. The preparations began. I wanted to bring thoughtful gifts, things that showed I had paid attention to their lives even from a distance. For my father, I found a rare first edition of his favorite mystery author. For my mother, I selected a handcrafted serving platter from a renowned Boston artisan, knowing she prided herself on her entertaining. For Brian, premium tickets to a Denver Broncos game. For Amanda, a weekend spa retreat she could enjoy away from her 3 young children. For Jessica, art supplies from a boutique store that specialized in imported materials. Each gift was wrapped beautifully and with care, a stark contrast to the clearance bath products I'd received 5 years ago. I wasn't trying to buy their love with expensive presents. I simply wanted to give gifts that reflected genuine thought. I decided against arriving in my private jet. That revelation could wait. Instead, I booked a first-class commercial ticket to Chicago and arranged for a modest rental car, an Audi rather than my usual Tesla. Subtle signs of success, without ostentation. The flight gave me time to mentally prepare. I reviewed the family updates I gleaned from our infrequent communications and social media. Brian was now a regional manager for a sporting goods chain in Denver. He'd been dating someone new for a few months. Amanda was still married to John, with 3 children under the age of 6. Jessica had completed art school and was teaching community college classes while trying to establish herself in galleries. As the plane descended into Chicago O'Hare, I felt a familiar tension in my shoulders. I straightened my cashmere sweater and adjusted my simple gold necklace, armor of a different kind than I usually wore to board meetings. The drive to the suburbs was filled with memories at every turn. The ice cream shop where I'd celebrated my academic achievements alone. The library where I'd spent countless hours escaping into books. The park where I'd watched my siblings receive attention and praise while I sat on the sidelines. The family home looked exactly the same, down to the slightly crooked wreath on the front door. I parked the rental car behind Brian's SUV and took a deep breath before retrieving my suitcase and the bag of carefully wrapped gifts. My mother answered the door, her expression shifting from polite welcome to recognition. "Natalie, you made it." Her hug was brief, perfunctory. "Everyone's in the living room. Brian just arrived an hour ago." I followed her inside, the familiar scent of cinnamon and pine bringing back a flood of memories. The living room fell momentarily quiet as I entered. My father looked up from his newspaper, seeming slightly surprised despite knowing I was coming. "There she is," he said, not getting up from his recliner. The busy career woman finally found time for family. Brian stood and gave me a quick side hug.
"Hey, sis.
Long time no see." He gestured to a pretty woman beside him. "This is Vanessa." Amanda waved from the couch where she was scrolling through her phone. "We thought you might cancel last minute. You know, important business and all that." The slight edge in her voice was unmistakable. Jessica offered the warmest greeting, actually standing to hug me properly. "I'm glad you came," she said, and for a moment I felt a genuine connection. The first evening unfolded exactly as I had anticipated. Conversation revolved around Brian's recent promotion, Amanda's children's accomplishments, and Jessica's upcoming gallery showing. When asked about my life, I gave intentionally vague answers, watching as interest quickly faded before I had finished speaking. I was assigned to the small guest room that had once been the home office, while Brian and Vanessa took my old bedroom. The message was clear. I was a visitor, while my brother remained central to the family. As I unpacked my suitcase, I overheard my mother and Amanda talking in the hallway. "She looks thin," my mother said. "Probably works too much and doesn't eat properly." "Did you see that sweater? Must have cost a fortune." "Trying to show off that she's doing well, I guess," Amanda replied. "She always was trying to prove something," my mother agreed. "I wonder if she's actually successful or just pretending. She's never very specific about her job." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The old hurt tried to surface, but I pushed it back down. I was no longer that desperate for approval girl. I was a woman who had built an empire. Their opinions couldn't diminish that reality. Later that night, as the house quieted, I stepped outside onto the back porch and called Olivia. "How is it?" she asked immediately. "Exactly what I expected," I replied, watching my breath form clouds in the cold December air. "Nothing has changed. I'm still an afterthought." "You can still leave," Olivia reminded me. "Your jet can be there in hours."
I smilte her protectiveness.
"No, I'm seeing this through. 2 more days won't kill me. And I have a plan." "The big reveal?" "Yes," I confirmed. "Christmas Day, during the gift exchange. That's when I'll finally be honest about who I've become." "I wish I could be there to see their faces," Olivia said with a laugh. "I'll give you all the details afterward," I promised. For now, I need to play the role of unassuming Natalie for just a little longer. I ended the call and looked up at the stars, feeling strangely calm. For the first time, I was home not seeking love or validation, but to close a chapter. The liberation in that realization carried me to sleep despite the uncomfortable guest bed and the weight of unspoken truths. Christmas Eve morning arrived with a scent of coffee and my mother's traditional cinnamon rolls. I made my way downstairs to find the kitchen bustling with activity. My mother was at the stove, Jessica was setting the table, and Amanda was feeding her youngest child in a high chair. "Good morning," I said, reaching for a mug in the cabinet. "Oh, Natalie, you're up," my mother replied without turning around. "Can you check if the newspaper's arrived? Your father's looking for it." "No, good morning," in return, no. "How did you sleep?" "Just an immediate task assignment." Some things never changed. I retrieved the newspaper from the front porch and delivered it to my father, who grunted his thanks without looking up from his phone. Returning to the kitchen, I noticed the cinnamon rolls being distributed. 8 rolls, 7 people. The extra was placed on Brian's plate. "Brian's always starving in the morning," my mother explained when she caught my glance, though I hadn't said a word. Breakfast conversations centered around the day's preparations for Christmas dinner. Tasks were delegated, and unsurprisingly, I received the least desirable ones. "Natalie, you can peel the potatoes and chop the vegetables," my mother instructed. "Amanda needs to rest because of the children. Jessica's helping me with the baking, and Brian and your father need to bring in more firewood." I nodded, accepting the peeler without comment. 3 pounds of potatoes and a mountain of vegetables awaited me. As I worked at the sink, the others moved around the kitchen, their conversations flowing around me as if I were invisible. "Brian, how's the new position treating you?" my father asked, pouring himself more coffee. Brian launched into a detailed account of his job managing the sporting goods store, making his role sound akin to running a Fortune 500 company. "I oversee 15 employees now, and our regional sales are up 7% since I took over." "That's my boy," my father beamed, clapping him on the shoulder. "Always knew you had leadership potential." I suppressed a smile as I diced onions. My company employed over 500 people directly, with our software supporting more than 100,000 businesses worldwide. But I kept silent, focusing on the rhythmic motion of the knife against the cutting board. Amanda joined in, boasting about her husband John's recent promotion at the local bank. "He's assistant branch manager now. We're thinking of putting in a pool next summer." "How wonderful," my mother exclaimed. "The children will love that." Jessica shared updates about her art classes and a small exhibition she had participated in last month. 3 of my pieces were displayed, and 1 almost sold. "You're making such progress," my mother encouraged. "Your father and I are so proud." The conversation continued for 30 minutes, with each sibling receiving undivided attention and enthusiastic responses. Eventually, my mother seemed to remember my presence. "And what about you, Natalie? Still doing that computer thing?" All eyes turned to me, with expressions ranging from polite disinterest to barely concealed dismissal. "Yes," I replied simply. "Still in tech. The company's doing well." "That's nice," my mother said, already turning back to Jessica. "Now, about your gallery showing next month." The pattern continued throughout the day. When not assigned chores, I was either overlooked in conversations or subjected to subtle digs about my appearance, my single status, or my absence from family gatherings. "You've lost weight," Amanda commented as we arranged ornaments on the tree. "Not eating properly? Or is it one of those crash diets?" "I eat well," I responded. "Just busy." "Too busy for family, obviously," she added with a tight smile. 5 years is a long time, Natalie. Mom was hurt, though she'd never say it. I glanced toward the kitchen where our mother was fussing over Brian's girlfriend, showing her family photo albums. "She seems to have managed." "That's unfair," Amanda frowned. "Just because you chose career over family doesn't mean we don't care about you." I bit back the response that bubbled up. There was no point arguing about who had chosen what. Tomorrow would reveal enough. Later, as I helped Jessica wrap last-minute gifts in her old bedroom, I experienced one genuine moment of connection. "I've followed your company online," she said quietly, surprising me. "Integrated, right? I use it for managing my art studio finances."
I ser det her, momentarily skittiles.
"Don't look so shocked," she laughed. "I recognized your photo on the website a couple years ago. I didn't tell anyone because you obviously wanted to keep it private." "Why didn't you say anything to me?" I asked. Jessica shrugged. "You seem determined to keep your worlds separate. I respected that." She paused, measuring a length of ribbon. "For what it's worth, I think what you've built is incredible." For a moment, I saw a potential ally in my artistic sister. "Thank you, Jessica. That means a lot." "They don't understand people like us," she continued. "People who create things. Dad and Mom, even Brian and Amanda, they're so conventional in their thinking. Success to them is a promotion at an existing company, not building something new." I nodded, feeling a surprising kinship with my youngest sibling. "Tomorrow will be interesting," I said. Jessica raised an eyebrow but didn't ask for elaboration. Instead, she handed me another gift to wrap. "This one's for Amanda's oldest. Make it pretty." The afternoon faded into evening, and the traditional Christmas Eve dinner was served. I had spent hours helping prepare it, yet when my mother presented the meal, she credited everyone but me. Amanda made the cranberry sauce, Jessica did the green bean casserole, Brian carved the ham beautifully, and of course, your father selected the wine. My contributions of peeling, chopping, mixing, and cleaning went unacknowledged. Dinner conversation was dominated by Brian's animated stories about his sporting goods career and amateur hockey league. When he finished a particularly long anecdote about a difficult customer, he turned to me with a condescending smile. "So, little sis, what exactly do you do all day? Sit in a cubicle typing code? Sounds mind-numbing." Before I could respond, my father jumped in. "Not everyone can handle the pressure of managing people, Brian. Some folks are better behind the scenes." I took a sip of wine, letting the comment slide past me. If only they knew that just yesterday, I had led a board meeting discussing the acquisition of a $50 million company. As the dinner plates were cleared, I overheard my mother and Amanda in the kitchen. "Do you think Natalie's really doing well?" my mother asked. "She's so vague about her job." "Probably embarrassed," Amanda replied. "All that education and likely stuck in some dead-end tech support role. Why else would she avoid talking about it? I just worry she's alone up there in Boston. No husband, no children, just work. That's no life for a woman her age." I silently loaded dishes into the dishwasher, invisible once again despite being feet away from them. After dinner, Brian cornered me in the living room while the others were preparing for the traditional viewing of It's a Wonderful Life. "Listen, Nat," he said, his voice lowered in what he probably thought was brotherly concern. "If you're struggling financially, I could probably get you a job in our corporate office. Nothing fancy, but steady work with benefits. You've got a college degree, so you'd start above entry level." The irony was so rich, I almost laughed aloud. Instead, I maintained my composure. "I appreciate the offer, Brian, but I'm doing fine." He patted my shoulder condescendingly. "The offer stands. Family looks out for family, right? Even when they disappear for 5 years." The barb was delivered with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The evening concluded with everyone exchanging one small gift, a family tradition before the main gift exchange on Christmas morning. Everyone except me, that is. When the small presents were distributed, I was overlooked entirely. "Oh, did we forget Natalie?" my mother said, noticing after everyone else had opened their gifts. "I think there might be something for you in the hall closet. I'll check tomorrow." I smiled politely. "No problem. Tomorrow is the main event anyway." As the household settled for the night, I retreated to the guest room and called Olivia again. "They haven't changed a bit," I told her. "If anything, they're worse than I remembered. Are you okay?" Olivia asked, concern evident in her voice. "Strangely, yes," I replied. "Their behavior doesn't hurt like it used to. It's almost fascinating to observe, like studying a dysfunctional ecosystem." "Just remember you're not that powerless kid anymore," Olivia reminded me. "You're Natalie Carter, CEO and founder. Their opinion of you doesn't define your worth." "I know," I said, feeling stronger than I had all day. "Tomorrow, they'll know it too." Christmas morning dawned bright and cold, sunlight reflecting off the snow outside my window. I woke early, a habit formed from years of pre-dawn work sessions. The house was still quiet as I showered and dressed in a simple but elegant outfit. I chose understated jewelry, a pair of diamond studs that had been my first significant purchase after securing major funding. By the time I made my way downstairs, my mother was already in the kitchen preparing breakfast. Without being asked, I began making coffee and setting the table. "You're up early," she commented, mixing pancake batter. "Always have been," I replied, arranging plates and silverware. "Well, since you're here, can you run out and get the newspaper? And then start the bacon. Your brother will be down soon, and you know how he loves his bacon." And just like that, the day's pattern was established. As each family member appeared, I was assigned more tasks: cooking bacon, refilling coffee cups, cleaning up wrapping paper scraps from the previous night, setting the table for the big Christmas dinner. Each request was made with the assumption that of course I would comply, of course I had nothing better to do, of course my purpose was to serve the family's needs. "Natalie, can you run upstairs and get Amanda's phone charger? She needs to take pictures of the children opening presents." "Natalie, would you mind tidying the living room before we open gifts? It's looking cluttered." "Natalie, Brian's coffee is empty. Would you refresh it for him?" I complied with each request without complaint, observing how no similar demands were made of my siblings. Amanda sat scrolling through her phone. Jessica lounged on the couch sketching. Brian and my father watched a Christmas parade on television. My role as family servant had been immediately reestablished despite my 5-year absence. Late morning brought the preparation of Christmas dinner, where again I was assigned the most tedious tasks: peeling more potatoes, chopping more vegetables, setting the formal dining table with the good china that had to be hand-washed first. "You always were so good at the details," my mother said, which was her way of justifying why I got the menial jobs while she and Jessica handled the more visible, praised tasks of making the turkey and decorating the table. At one point, I stepped outside for a brief respite and checked my phone. 3 urgent emails had arrived from my executive team regarding the major acquisition we were finalizing. I responded quickly, authorizing the next steps in the process that would add another $100 million to our company's value. When I returned inside, Amanda gave me a disapproving look. "Can't disconnect even for Christmas Day? Whatever low-level IT job you have can't be that important." I smiled enigmatically. "You'd be surprised." The elaborate Christmas dinner was served at 3 o'clock. My contributions went unmentioned as my mother presented each dish with a flourish, crediting herself, Jessica, and even Brian's girlfriend Vanessa, who had merely stirred the gravy once. "Amanda's children are just darling," my mother gushed as the youngest threw mashed potatoes on the floor. "Brian, that promotion is so impressive. Jessica, the centerpiece you created is absolutely beautiful." No comment was directed my way, not even the most basic, "Nice job with the potatoes, Natalie," though I'd peeled and mashed 10 pounds of them. After dinner, while the others retreated to the living room to digest before opening presents, I was left with cleanup duty. I loaded the dishwasher, wrapped leftovers, and wiped down counters while listening to laughter and conversation from the next room. Finally, It was time for the main event. The Christmas tree glittered with lights, and beneath it sat a mountain of wrapped presents. I had placed my carefully selected gifts for each family member among them earlier that morning. "Let's do this by person, like always," my father announced, appointing himself as gift distributor as he had every year of my childhood. Brian first, then Amanda and her kids, then Jessica, then Mom, then me. I noticed my absence from the list, but said nothing, sitting cross-legged on the floor near the tree. My father began distributing Brian's gifts, creating a substantial pile before my brother. New golf clubs from our parents, expensive wireless headphones from Jessica, a custom Denver Broncos jersey from Amanda and her family. When it was my turn to present my gift, I handed Brian the small envelope containing the premium Broncos tickets. His expression as he opened it shifted from disinterest to surprise. "Front row? For the playoff game? These must have cost a fortune," he exclaimed, actually looking at me with new respect. "I'm glad you like them," I said simply. The pattern repeated with Amanda. She received a new tablet from our parents, designer handbag from Brian, art supplies for her children from Jessica. My gift of the spa weekend elicited genuine gratitude. "This is actually really thoughtful, Natalie," she admitted, studying the brochure for the 5-star resort. "Thank you." Jessica was next, accumulating art supplies, books, and a new winter coat. When she opened my gift of the imported art materials, her eyes widened. "These are top of the line," she breathed. "I've wanted these for years, but could never justify the expense." My mother received kitchen appliances, jewelry, and garden tools from the others. My gift of the handcrafted serving platter genuinely delighted her. "This is exquisite," she said, running her fingers over the detailed work. "Where did you find something so unique?" "A Boston artisan," I explained. "Each piece is one of a kind." My father was last of the siblings and parents, collecting new tools, books, and golf accessories. When he opened my gift, the rare first edition of his favorite mystery author, he looked genuinely stunned. "This is incredible," he said, carefully turning the pages. "It must have been difficult to find." "It took some searching," I acknowledged. As Amanda's children opened their gifts amid squeals of excitement, I noticed my siblings exchanging looks. My presence had been unexpectedly thoughtful and generous, disrupting their narrative about their neglectful, career-obsessed sister. When the last of the children's gifts had been opened, colorful wrapping paper covered the floor like confetti. Everyone sat surrounded by their bounty, examining their gifts and thanking each other. Everyone except me, that is. I sat empty-handed, not a single package having been passed my way. An awkward silence gradually fell over the room as the realization dawned that I had been completely overlooked. Even Jessica, who had shown some connection with me, looked uncomfortable but remained silent. My mother was the first to notice, or at least to acknowledge, the oversight. She laughed nervously, a high-pitched sound that didn't convey actual humor.
"Oh,
"We forgot you, Natalie," she exclaimed, looking around as if a gift might materialize from thin air. "How silly of us." The silence deepened. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. Brian suddenly became very interested in his new golf clubs. Amanda busied herself with her children. "I'm sure we have something," my father said vaguely, making no move to look for anything. It must have gotten misplaced in all the excitement. I could feel their expectation of my response. They were waiting for tears, or hurt, or anger. The overlooked daughter, forgotten once again, surely would break down or lash out. In their minds, I was still that validation-seeking child desperate for their approval. The moment stretched, tension building. My mother's nervous smile began to fade. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. 5 years ago, this moment would have devastated me. Today, it merely confirmed what I already knew. The room remained silent, all eyes now on me as they waited for my reaction to being the only person without a single gift. I could see the mixture of guilt and discomfort on their faces, but also something else. A subtle satisfaction from Amanda. A resignation from my father that suggested this was somehow my fault for being absent for 5 years. A genuine but passive concern from Jessica. Instead of the tears or hurt they expected, I smiled calmly. "It's okay," I said, my voice steady and confident. "Look what I got myself." I reached for my handbag beside the couch and pulled out my laptop. Opening it on the coffee table where everyone could see, I navigated to my company's website. The integrated logo filled the screen, followed by our homepage featuring client testimonials, industry awards, and our impressive statistics. "This is my company," I explained, turning the screen toward them. "I founded it 5 years ago, right after the last Christmas I spent here." Confusion rippled across their faces. Brian leaned forward, squinting at the screen. "You work for this company?" "No," I corrected him gently. "I created it. I'm the founder and CEO." My mother laughed nervously. "That's a big company, Natalie. Are you in management there?" "I own it," I stated clearly. 100% of the founding shares and 40% of the current company after several investment rounds. Disbelief was evident in their expressions. I navigated to our About page, where my professional headshot and biography were prominently displayed. "Natalie Carter, founder and CEO," my father read aloud, his voice hollow with shock. "Integrated is now valued at just over $3 billion, I continued, keeping my tone conversational rather than boastful. "We have offices in 7 countries and serve over 100,000 businesses worldwide. Last year, our revenue exceeded $400 million. The room was completely silent now. Even Amanda's children seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere and had stopped playing with their new toys. Brian was the first to recover, his expression shifting from shock to skepticism. "Come on, there's no way. You must be exaggerating the numbers." In response, I pulled up recent articles from Forbes, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal that featured interviews with me and analyses of my company's impact on the business software industry. Natalie Carter's Integrated has revolutionized how small to medium businesses operate. Jessica read from one headline, her voice filled with genuine amazement. Amanda grabbed her phone and began frantically searching, then looked up with wide eyes. "She's telling the truth. There are dozens of articles about her. About the company." I navigated to a video of my recent keynote speech at a major tech conference, where I addressed an audience of thousands. The camera panned across the rapt crowd before returning to me on stage, confidently explaining the future of integrated business technologies. "That's really you," my mother whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "Yes," I confirmed simply. My father's expression had transformed from disbelief to something more complex. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Would it have mattered?" I asked, not unkindly. "When I tried to tell you about starting my company 5 years ago, I was sent to the kitchen to mash potatoes. No one had a response to that. The truth of it hung in the air between us." Brian, still struggling to accept the revelation, attempted to reassert himself. "Anyone can start a company. Most fail within the first year. You got lucky." I smiled, not rising to the bait. Luck was certainly a factor. So was working 18-hour days for years. So was having the right idea at the right time.
So was building an extraordinary team.
Success is always a combination of factors. I turned to a financial page on my laptop, displaying Integrated's current valuation and my personal net worth. The numbers were substantial enough to render even Brian momentarily speechless. "You're rich," Amanda stated, as if trying to process this new reality. "By most standards, yes," I acknowledged. "Though most of my wealth is in company equity rather than liquid assets." My father leaned forward, suddenly interested. "So, what does that mean exactly? In terms of actual money?" "It means I could buy this house with what I spend on coffee each year," I said matter-of-factly. "It means the watch I'm wearing cost more than Brian's new car. It means I flew here commercial and rented an Audi instead of taking my private jet because I didn't want to make a statement right away." Their stunned expressions might have been comical under different circumstances. "But here's what might interest you most," I continued, navigating to another screen. "Dad, the sporting goods chain where Brian works? My company's acquired a 30% stake in their parent company last year. And Mom, that bank where Amanda's husband John works? We process all their back-end financial software. In a very real sense, both Brian and John work for companies that I partially own or directly support. The implications of this seemed to hit my father particularly hard. His face flushed as he processed the fact that his golden son effectively worked for his overlooked daughter. My phone rang, interrupting the moment. I checked the screen. I need to take this. It's my executive team. I answered, aware of my family listening to every word. Natalie Carter speaking. Yes, Marcus, go ahead with the final offer as discussed. The full $300 million contingent on the technology transfer agreement we outlined. Have legal prepare the documents for signing tomorrow.
I'll be back in Boston by then.
Thank you. I ended the call and returned my attention to my family, who were staring at me as if seeing a stranger.
Sorry about that.
We're finalizing a major acquisition. I closed my laptop calmly. Any questions? Jessica was the first to recover enough to speak. I knew you were successful, but I had no idea it was on this scale. I'm using your software for my small art business, but these numbers, it's incredible, Natalie. You knew? My mother asked Jessica sharply. I recognized her photo on the website when I signed up for the service, Jessica admitted. But it wasn't my place to share Natalie's business. All this time, my mother said, turning to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. All these years, you've been building something I'm proud of. I completed her sentence. Something that helps thousands of businesses operate more efficiently. Something that employs over 500 people directly and supports livelihoods indirectly across the globe. And you never thought to tell us? My father asked, an edge to his voice. I tried early on. I reminded him gently. The interest wasn't there. After a while, it seemed easier to keep my worlds separate. Brian, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. So, you came back just to rub our noses in your success? To show us all up? I shook my head. No, Brian. I came back because despite everything, you're my family. I wanted to stop living a compartmentalized life. And yes, perhaps I wanted you to finally see me, not as the overlooked middle child, but as the woman I've become. The atmosphere in the room had transformed completely. The confident, successful woman before them bore little resemblance to the daughter and sister they had dismissed for decades. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. Amanda, ever practical, was the first to attempt to capitalize on the revelation. We've always believed in you, Natalie. Family is so important, and we should really spend more time together. The children would love to get to know their successful aunt better. I smiled politely, but didn't take the bait. Family is indeed important. That's why I'm here. My mother, recovering her composure, stood suddenly. We need to celebrate. I'll open that special champagne we've been saving. This is wonderful news, Natalie. We're so proud of you. As she hurried to the kitchen, I noticed how quickly we forgot you had transformed into we're so proud of you. The revelation of my success had immediately changed my value in her eyes. My father, never one to miss an opportunity, leaned forward with newfound interest. I've always thought about investing in technology. Perhaps we could discuss some opportunities. Father-daughter business venture, that sort of thing. I have excellent financial advisors who handle my investments, I replied neutrally. But I'm happy to recommend some resources for beginning investors. The implied message was clear. I wasn't going to be an ATM for the family that had overlooked me for decades. As my mother returned with champagne and began pouring glasses with shaking hands, the room had taken on an almost surreal quality. Suddenly, I was the center of attention, the focus of every conversation, the recipient of compliments and questions and interest that had never been directed my way before. A toast, my father declared, raising his glass. To Natalie, the most successful Carter in family history. The others raised their glasses, their expressions a complex mixture of shock, admiration, reevaluation, and in some cases, barely concealed envy or calculation. I raised my glass as well, but added quietly, success isn't measured only in dollars. There are many ways to build a meaningful life. The Christmas morning had transformed into something none of us had anticipated. The overlooked daughter had revealed herself to be the most accomplished person in the room, and no one quite knew how to proceed. In the days following my revelation, the family dynamic underwent a seismic shift. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk to me, to hear about my company, to understand how I had built something so substantial while they weren't paying attention. My mother hovered nearby constantly, offering food and drinks I hadn't requested, reminiscing about my childhood accomplishments she had previously ignored. "I always knew you were special, Natalie," she said repeatedly, as if trying to rewrite history in real time. "You were always so independent, so determined. I just wanted to let you find your own path." I accepted these revisionist statements with polite nods, but didn't challenge them directly. There was little point in arguing about the past. Brian's approach was more transparent. After his initial disbelief faded, he immediately began exploring how my success might benefit him. "You know, sis, I've been thinking about moving into corporate for a while now. With my management experience and your connections, I could really excel in a tech environment. The best jobs at Integrated are earned through our standard hiring process," I explained calmly. "We pride ourselves on our meritocratic culture. But I'm happy to connect you with some resources on transitioning to the tech industry if you're genuinely interested." His smile faltered slightly. "Come on, Natalie. Family helps family, right? That's what you always wanted." "Yes," I agreed. "And I'm helping you by not undermining our company's values and your own potential growth by offering shortcuts." Amanda took a different approach, suddenly positioning herself as my closest ally and confidant. "We should really get together more often," she insisted, sitting beside me on the couch. "The children need to know their successful aunt. And I've always been interested in business. Perhaps I could consult for you part-time." "What's your experience in software or business management?" I asked mildly. "Well, I managed the household budget and organized the PDA fundraiser last year," she replied, completely serious. "Those are transferable skills." "They certainly are valuable skills," I acknowledged. "But Integrated employs people with advanced degrees and decades of industry experience. I'd be doing you a disservice by placing you in a role you weren't qualified for." Only Jessica maintained something close to genuine in her reactions. "I always knew you were brilliant," she said quietly as we sat together on the porch swing. "I just never imagined this scale of success. I'm truly happy for you, Natalie." "Thank you," I replied, sensing her sincerity. "Your artistic path is equally valid, you know. Success isn't only measured in dollars or company size." "I know," she nodded, "but I do admire what you've built. Not just the business, but the life. You seem complete in yourself. That's rare." Her insight surprised me. Of all my siblings, Jessica had always been the most perceptive. On the final evening of my visit, I had a private conversation with my mother in the kitchen as we washed dishes together, a task she had suddenly decided to help with rather than leaving it all to me. "I owe you an apology, Natalie," she said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I didn't see you clearly. For many years, I didn't see you at all." I paused, a plate suspended in my hands. This was as close to genuine acknowledgement as I had ever received from her.
Why?
I asked simply. She sighed, continuing to dry a glass without meeting my eyes. "You were always so capable, so self-sufficient. Brian needed the extra attention because of his learning challenges. Amanda struggled with confidence. Jessica was so sensitive. But you seemed to thrive no matter what. I think I told myself you didn't need me as much." "Everyone needs to be seen, Mom," I said quietly. "Even capable children." "I know that now," she admitted. "Seeing what you've accomplished completely on your own, it makes me proud, but it also makes me sad. We should have been there. I should have been there." The acknowledgement was decades late, but still meaningful. "Thank you for saying that." My father approached me later that night as I packed my suitcase, lingering awkwardly in the doorway of the guest room. "Your mother told me what she said to you," he began, uncharacteristically tentative. "She's right, you know. We missed a lot. I missed a lot." I continued folding a sweater, waiting for him to continue. "I didn't understand you," he admitted. "Still don't, if I'm being honest. This world you've built for yourself, it's beyond anything I could have imagined for any of my children. It's not about the money, Dad, I told him. It's about creating something meaningful, solving problems that matter. I know, he nodded. But the scale of it, it's extraordinary. And I never saw that potential in you. That's on me, not you. It wasn't a full apology, but coming from my father, it was significant. We all have blind spots, I offered. Will we see you again? He asked. Or has this visit answered whatever questions you came with? The question was surprisingly insightful. I came looking for closure, I admitted. But I think I found something else. A beginning, maybe. A chance to build a different kind of relationship. He nodded slowly. I'd like that. My siblings processed the revelations in their own ways. Brian remained somewhat resentful, but made efforts to ask about my work with what seemed like genuine interest. Amanda fluctuated between subtle envy and attempts to leverage our connection. Jessica and I established a more authentic relationship, with plans to meet in Boston for an art exhibition. On my last morning, as I prepared to leave, my niece Lucy, Amanda's oldest child at 6 years old, approached me with a drawing. This is for you, Aunt Natalie, she said shyly. It's you with your company. The crayon drawing showed a stick figure with long hair standing beside a tall building with integrated, written in childish scrawl across the top. Thank you, Lucy, I said, genuinely touched. This is going on my office wall. Her smile was the most uncomplicated gift I had received during the entire visit. As I drove away from the family home, I reflected on the journey that had brought me full circle. I had come seeking closure for the overlooked child I had been. I was leaving as a woman fully realized, neither defined by my family's perception nor by my rebellion against it. The greatest freedom wasn't in proving my worth to those who had failed to see it. It was in no longer needing that validation at all. My success wasn't a weapon to wield against them, but a testament to my own journey. I called Olivia from the airport. How did it go? She asked immediately. Better than expected in some ways, exactly as expected in others, I replied. Their reaction to my success was predictable. What I didn't anticipate was my reaction to their reaction. Meaning, I thought I wanted them to finally see me and acknowledge what I've built. And they did in their own limited ways. But it didn't feel like I expected. How so? It felt unnecessary, I realized as I said it. The validation I spent decades craving from them doesn't matter anymore. I've built a life that speaks for itself. When I returned to Boston, I made one significant decision. I established an anonymous educational trust for my nieces and nephews, ensuring they would have resources for college regardless of their parents' financial situations. Not because I sought gratitude, but because education had been my own pathway to independence. 6 months later, I invited Jessica to visit me in Boston. Showing her my penthouse, my offices, and introducing her to my team of brilliant colleagues, I felt a genuine connection forming between us as adults, separate from our childhood dynamics. You've created an amazing world, she observed as we stood on my office balcony, overlooking the city. But the most impressive thing isn't the company or the wealth. It's your peace. You seem completely at home in yourself. Her insight struck me as profound. That's the real empire, I agreed. The internal one. When Christmas came around again, I returned to Chicago, this time in my private jet. The family gathering was different. Not perfect, not suddenly healed of all its dysfunctional patterns, but changed in meaningful ways. My gifts were not forgotten. My voice was not ignored in conversations. My accomplishments were acknowledged, sometimes awkwardly, but sincerely. And I found myself less focused on what I was or wasn't receiving from them, more aware of what I could genuinely offer. The greatest lesson wasn't that success would finally make them see me. It was that I no longer needed them to see me to know my own worth. The validation I had spent a lifetime seeking from them had ultimately come from within, from building something meaningful, from creating connections with people who valued me for exactly who I was. The overlooked daughter had become a woman who could never be overlooked again, not because of external success, but because she had finally, completely seen herself. Have you ever felt invisible to the people who should love you most? Did my story of finding validation within myself rather than seeking it from family resonate with your experiences? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey of self-discovery spoke to you, please like this video, subscribe to hear more stories of personal triumph, and share with someone who might need to be reminded of their own worth today. Remember, sometimes the most powerful empire you can build is the one within yourself. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength to create your own path to self-validation.